Welcome back to the Nick and Joe podcast. How you doing this week, Nick? What's going on?
I'm doing good. Still kind of tired with the new puppy. She has a ton of energy. Just got back into streaming regularly this week. Other than that, not really much. Still quarantined, so,
No, yeah, I'm the same really, minus the puppy. Except no, I'm still waiting on a reply from Twitch. It's been 4 weeks.
Oh, wow.
4 weeks since second partner application. But used to that now.
Yeah.
We wanted to cover security today. Web security, your privacy. But before I get into that, there was an interesting article. Well, this all over the internet. That links into what we've been talking about in recent weeks with regards to trans rights and the trans movements. So, World Rugby, those of you across the pond, rugby's like, I guess it's like American football, but without all the padding and helmets and stuff. And it's a bit more hardcore, by the way. World Rugby is considering banning trans women from playing women's rugby because of significant safety concerns that emerged following recent research. Now, what the research has shown is that women who are tackled by a trans person that's been through male puberty are at 20 to 30% greater risk of injury. And there's obviously been uproar about this, as you can imagine. Now,
yeah,
as far as I stand on that, I mean, I like if you went through puberty as a man and you're competing in rugby with women, I mean, the facts are it's physically it's not fair, is it? Surely, like, like how can it be? But
yeah.
There are people that are absolutely up in arms and they want petitions signed to keep women playing. There's also a few trans women that and men that have come out and said, we can't have this in sport. They're on the side of the research and they're saying we can't have this in sport, and people who are claiming otherwise are doing our cause more harm than good. But I guess it's getting to the point where, see, this is rugby, which is obviously it's not big in the States. It's very big. It's big in the UK, Western Europe, and quite a lot of the Southern Hemisphere countries, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, even Japan now. Japan are a very competitive team now, and I guess it's getting to the point where they're starting to have to make calls about this sort of thing. And now this isn't even about being fair. This is that the chances of injury are at greater risk for biological women playing against trans women. Yes, being tackled by trans women, because in rugby there's no padding, there's no you tackle and that's it. You go in body to body. And it's dangerous anyway, don't get me wrong, because I mean, people could probably argue, well, it's a dangerous sport, right? Because it is a dangerous sport. Very dangerous sport. But if that risk then again is almost is raised again, I guess you could argue that, yeah, it's 20 to 30% increase, which is bad, obviously. But if that's every tackle and it's already a dangerous sport, yeah, you probably don't want that happening. But in my head anyway, surely it's just not fair in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I think if you take gender even away from it, or, the fact that it's transgender, if you just consider all across the board women, which is, how we hope to get to ultimately is just they are just women, right?
Yeah.
When you think about, for example, like MMA, they do weigh-ins, don't they? Or WWE, like a lot of fighting and obviously I don't keep up a lot with fighting, but I do know that they do weigh-ins and they have different classes, like featherweight, I believe is one.
Right.
And then like heavyweight and stuff like that. So clearly, and that, you know, whether it's a male versus a male or female versus a female, there are still weigh-ins to say, okay, well, this is not an even or equal matchup. So if you don't even consider the fact that it's women and transgender women, I do think that maybe that's a case for having a weigh-in system so that everyone's able to participate and nobody's at a higher risk of getting hurt. I know it's not like an ideal solution, but realistically, there are no ideal solutions, I don't think. Because the alternative is to kind of, you know, go back with transgender rights, and we don't want that. We want to go forward.
Certainly that's an interesting idea for sure, and something I hadn't really thought about, especially, you know, in team sports and that sort of stuff. We know obviously it happens in like you say, it happens in boxing, it happens in all different types of MMA. You'll have different weight classes, but at the same time, like that's a good idea, and you could say, you know, maybe you've got to be a certain weight before you, if you're like, say you're a trans man who wants to play with guys, if you had to be a certain weight, you know, I don't know. Would that be a bad idea? Probably not. That might help. And then the same if you were, you know, under a certain weight. But then it becomes difficult again, because if you get the same men and women that are the same weight, then pound for pound, the you know, not every time, but like going back to the throwing the ball thing, the men will be stronger pound for pound. The biological men will be stronger pound for pound. But certainly if they were a certain weight, you know, or under a certain weight, whichever way you wanted to swing it, I would think that would definitely help. But then it feels like another area of exclusion, because they wouldn't be testing, I guess they wouldn't be testing like everyone in the team, unless they just did it as a way of helping the whole team and saying, look, if you want to play this, you know, you want to play this sport with these people, you need to weigh it over a certain amount or under a certain amount.
Yeah, I do think it would be beneficial to test the whole team. You know, because there are going to be, for example, like I'm a very small woman. Like if I wanted to play rugby, there are some women out there I probably shouldn't be pitted against. Unless I want to die. So I don't think weighing the whole team would be a bad idea. I know it does come with, you know, some downsides for sure. Like there are some people who will try to keep their weight under a certain amount in order to just like, you know, fudge that line. And so like there are definitely downsides to it.
Yeah.
I just think it's probably one of our better solutions so far, and something that could be implemented potentially immediately or in the soon future, until we figure out a better solution.
Yeah, I guess. And the problem is as well is, I mean, like a good test for that would be something like football, what you call soccer. But like the problem is, I guess, like in American football or in rugby, the players carry different weights for which positions they're in, right? So like if your quarterback's not going to be, you know, the same as your guy who's taking all the hits, you know, at the front. And it's the same in rugby. You have wingers that have always been like, I mean, on the TV they just look like normal blokes. They're still stacked. But they need to be fast, so their weight is less. But obviously some sports like basketball, like soccer, football, it's non-contact, so that's kind of completely different. But yeah, it's really tough, and we don't have an answer. But if you're gonna say, take tennis for instance, if you're gonna let you know, a trans woman come in and play at the top level, and they are good, and they just devastate all the records, you just wipe out everything that You're just wiping out everything that Venus has done, everything that Serena's done. And actually, there was a what was her name? Let me find it really quickly. Because that's it. Martina Navratilova, who is a former world champion, is saying that the trans players are cheats. Now, hold on a second. I'll have to cut this bit while I just... Yeah, so basically, she's claiming she actually beat a trans woman years ago, one of the first, but apparently they are completely it's completely fine to play. What they do is they measure the levels of testosterone, so they have to have lower testosterone. But like from all the studies in science that I've heard, it's not a good test of like actual strength. And obviously, if you watch any of the professional tennis, the difference in service speed is phenomenal. Like the difference between the male servers and the female servers is astronomical. There's no way it's fair. Like it's not fair at all. Now, Martina saying this has put her out there as automatically as transphobic because she said that. And this is what I don't understand. The scientist who led the study behind the rugby, he's being called transphobic for science, for actual science. How can that be? How is that a thing? How is that? He's done a study in the hope of protecting people and being called transphobic for coming out with nothing but facts. Are we getting to the point where we're denying science now, or saying you're transphobic for doing even a study on it? Not saying it's right or wrong, but a study that says there are implications to this happening. And I just feel like it just puts me almost in despair because people are just too afraid to say anything for fear of being called transphobic. And it's dangerous because, and you know who loses out more than anybody else in all of this is biological women. They are the ones who lose out more than anybody else because the chances are you're not going to get that many trans men who want to come into men's sport, and they're not going to be able to dominate. You might get the odd one, of course. There will probably be an exception, of course, at some point. I don't doubt that, but on the whole, that's not going to happen. So everything that the women are working really hard for can be undone very quickly, and have worked hard for over the years can be undone really quickly. There's another case about this 40-year-old guy who went back to university and went on the girls' basketball team. And was showering in the same showers, was allowed to use the same showers as they were. Now, this guy had been through no transition or therapy or anything like that. So you go to uni or college and there's a 40-year-old dude in your shower, like just showering naked. And as far as you're concerned, his physicality is a man's. But he says otherwise. How would that make how would that make a really young woman feel? I mean, I can't put myself in that position, obviously, but there's got to be some other way, right? I mean,
yeah, I think we're in a difficult time because, of course, we want trans rights to progress and continue forward,
yeah,
and to be better than they are. But
yeah,
we're kind of navigating what that means and what that looks like for everyone.
yeah,
And I do think because we're in such a vocal time where a lot of people are speaking up, and where if you say the wrong thing, you're more likely to get attacked than you are to have an actual conversation or be understood. I think that's just making everything more difficult than it needs to be, because I mean, this is important, right? We don't want people getting hurt. And, you know, there are ways we can work on this problem and keep everyone safe, but it's gonna involve some hard conversations, which might mean using language that some people are going to consider transphobic, even though that's not the intention behind it. I do think a good thing to do would be to see what we can take measure or note of without bringing gender into it.
Yes.
So, for example, hormones is a good one to measure, but maybe not just hormones. Maybe it's a combination of measuring hormones and weight. You know, because MMA, they'll measure your weight and put you in a weight class. Maybe it's time to take an extra step, and, you know, an extra kind of precaution to make sure people don't get hurt, and also measure hormones, right? Because part of the thing about being transgender or intersex is that you can be born with different parts and different hormones.
Yes.
So you could be a woman with a lot more testosterone. So this doesn't just extend to trans people. This is kind of, you know, anyone can have a mixture of hormones.
Yeah, of course.
So then I feel like it's going beyond looking at, you know, for example, trans woman versus biologically born woman.
Yeah.
And just overall trying to keep people safe by pitting them up against people of equal skill level and hormone and weight, and just really trying to take that extra precaution regardless of gender or identification or anything.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously nobody has exactly the same amount of testosterone, exactly the same amount of estrogen. Nobody on the planet will have exactly the same. They can be close, and there's a common, you know, there's a common trend, of course, but also, I guess, and yes, the other thing is you can be born with different parts, but we're talking about a very, very, that starts to become a very, very small minority, like a very, very small minority. There's a trans, I have a story up written by a trans journalist. Her name's Diana Thomas. She says she's transgender, fierce defender of the rights of trans women, which I think I'm safe in saying me and you agree, Nick, on that, of course. And she completely understands why female sportswomen are furious that they have to compete against people who have grown up as males.
Yeah.
And she thinks that trans campaigners who insist on the right to compete against natal women are causing the harm of trans women as a whole. I 100% agree with that. I absolutely 100% agree with that. I would not say that I'm not that I'm opposed to finding ways of potentially making it happen. I'm not opposed to that at all. But I completely agree with what she's saying. And it's kind of, now she's gone on to say, like, saying that on Twitter for her has caused her so many problems. And I guess it's like the JK Rowling thing. You talk to a lot of people who are defending trans rights, and they're saying JK Rowling is transphobic, and that's it. When we went through the tweets, we spoke about the tweets, and then they're not transphobic. Like, in my opinion, they're not transphobic. Saying that there's an issue for women who are coming up against the problems that this is causing is not being transphobic. It's just stating facts, and it goes back to science again and facts. But we can't. I feel my biggest worry is that these people get their way, and we start to lose grip on facts and what reality is. that's it's not something I lose sleep over, but it's a genuine worry. And the thing out of all of this is, you know, you can't even say this stuff on Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get banned, or you will at least be suspended for saying that on Twitch. And that's my income.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't talk about that sort of stuff anyway, but if I said that on Twitch, if I said that, or if all I said was, if I said trans women who insist on being and competing in natal women's sport is causing a problem,
mm-hmm.
if it was reported and Twitch found out, I would get at least suspended. I guarantee.
Yeah.
Guarantee. This is the strange thing, is that I really like, and I think most people now in this, especially our age, Nick, really don't. Some do. Most of them really don't care. Like, they just want people to be happy and live their lives. Majority of people, I'm sure, but like, people are scared, institutions are scared, and corporate businesses are incredibly scared of saying or doing the wrong thing. And going back to the shower thing, I've heard people suggest, you know, well, do we have trans showers? But then there's other people who say, well, if you have trans showers, they're being singled out.
Yeah.
But I just can't get this. I can't get this thing where, like, if I went back to uni and said, well, I'm a woman, you have to treat me as such, and I want to play for the women's football team, and they said, yeah, well, I'm showering with the women. And they what, do they have to let me in then? And I'm showering with a load of like 18, 19, 20-year-old girls.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you do? Because at the minute it seems like there are places who are just letting this happen. And again, those young girls are the ones who are in potential risk or potential harm. I'm not saying that everybody who does that is like has any bad intentions. I'm not, but how vulnerable a position are you going to put people in just to satisfy what is, at the end of the day, a minority of people? Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have rights because they're a minority. That's what I stand against. They absolutely should have rights. But when you're compromising the safety of and exploiting the vulnerability of young women in particular, I feel like we have to question it, and I don't feel like anybody is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another one where I do feel like a solution needs to be made. I don't know what a good solution is.
No.
You know, ideally, maybe we have the option for, if you want to say, okay, well, I would like my own personal shower, and you don't have to say the reasons behind it. You don't have to say why you're uncomfortable, or, you know, because even if you were a woman on one of these teams and you were like, I'm kind of uncomfortable with this, you're going to get labeled as transphobic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The reality is, if you're uncomfortable with it, you're uncomfortable with it. Like, your body and your rights and what you're comfortable or not with showing your body to another person, I do think is very important as well.
Yeah, of course.
So, you know,
yes,
maybe women have the option to say, hey, I don't want to give a reason, but I would like my own private area. You know, that might be ideal, because then some people are going to be like, okay, well, this doesn't bother me at all. And then others are going to be like, okay, but I don't personally feel comfortable with it. You know, and some people are going to say that's transphobic, but again, I think you should have the option on who you do or don't want to show your body to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But the problem with that is having the facilities for it, and it is expensive. And some of these women might feel uncomfortable saying that, because if they haven't historically wanted their own area and now do, you know, it might come off the way. So also, it's really just a complicated situation.
It's also like then it would be a segregation though again as well, wouldn't it? I mean, unless you know, because like the old gym I used to go to, like the showers were open, the changing room was just open. There was no. I mean, you could if you were really concerned, there was like a disabled changing room with like baby changing facilities. But I mean, you probably wouldn't want to do that, right? Because you'd be taking up potential.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I ever felt uncomfortable in there. But I'd probably prefer it just to not shower with other dudes, you know. But I mean, it doesn't bother me too much. But if I was playing the thing is, being in like football over here is like American football. It's massive money, and they've got money and they've got great facilities and stuff. They all still bath and shower together just because it's part of the team. It's part of the whole. The whole vibe is, you're a team and you do everything together. And there's a lot of ex-football players just saying like they had the best times, just like, if they'd won, celebrating and, just messing around. Do we stop what in that situation, do we stop what probably a lot of people enjoy and like and think is part of the game to appease what is a small number of people? We don't have the answers, and I don't know what it is going forward. I think say if I was if I owned a gym, I probably just would make an area that was a small separate changing room that was all with all cubicles in. And then anybody who felt uncomfortable, literally anybody, it might be, people start going to the gym. Probably a lot of them are quite overweight if they want to get in shape, and they might not be comfortable with that, or they might be really skinny and they're trying to put on some muscle and they're not comfortable with their body, and that's why they're there in the first place. And then make it usable for everyone, I guess. And then that way it's not like, you'd still probably feel it'd probably still be a bit weird because you're going against the grain of most people and you're going into this special changing room, but still it wouldn't necessarily then just label you straight as trans, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is a good case for just go ahead and have separate showers and separate changing rooms. I mean, it does kind of take away from the historically very team-oriented, shared locker rooms and shared showers.
Yeah.
But it also eliminates a lot of problems. And even when you consider, just taking trans out of the equation, maybe there are some men who are already uncomfortable with the situation and don't want to speak up because, if you were a male and spoke up about that, you'd probably get a lot of shit for it, to be honest.
Probably would, yeah. They'd be like, oh, why do you want to go on your own and hide?
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe this is a good case for just go ahead and have separate showers and stuff. I personally would like my own separate, if I were on a team, regardless of if it's biological women, trans women, whatever, I'd want my own shower. I like my space. I like to just, be naked by myself, right? And not only that, but there is a level of attraction, right? Attraction is not just, like, oh, well, because it's all women, there's no sort of attraction or no sort of chance that somebody could be a predator or somebody could be raped. Women can rape women, men can rape men.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I just feel like maybe separating people out might be the next best step. It is safer, I think.
I think you're probably right, especially in a changing room situation. I don't know what the legislation is in the States, but I know over here. So if you build a new bar, if you build a new restaurant now, you have to implement disabled facilities. You have to have a disabled toilet. You have to have access for wheelchairs. If it's a new building, obviously if it's an old building it's not the same, because obviously it can't be expected of all the old buildings. It's just not It's just not achievable. But so then going forward, do we say, so if you're a gym, or if you're a swimming pool, or if you are whatever, and you've got changing facilities, or even just toilet facilities, you have to have a separate private one. Maybe it wouldn't be as big. It wouldn't need to be as big, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what will eventually happen, and hopefully. But then the problem is also is what if they don't want to do that? You know, what if whoever, trans man, trans female, what if they don't want to? What if they just want to go in with everyone else?
Yeah.
And this is the problem. Like, if I say I had a daughter, and she was going swimming with the mother, and there was just a regular guy in there who said, I'm a woman, but they weren't, and then they were all getting changed in the same area. I don't think I'd be happy with that. Like, yeah. I'm not saying it necessarily like I'd be not because I'd be necessarily just concerned about them being a predator, because it wouldn't necessarily mean that at all. But like, would that little girl it'd be a strange thing for her, right? Because it's just really difficult, and I feel like the people who are pushing back are not helping. Like, they're not helping come to a solution. They're just shouting transphobic when people are trying to do studies.
Yeah, well, I think the thing to keep in mind is that this needs to be a solution that makes everyone comfortable. Obviously, we want to progress trans rights, but not at the expense of making other people uncomfortable. Like, everyone's rights are equal. That's the point, right? We want trans rights to be equal to a biological woman's rights, to a biological man's rights. So I think when you say, okay, well, this is transphobic, but then ignore the fact that it's taking away someone else's right to be safe or comfortable, there needs to be some sort of solution that makes everyone as happy as possible. There's not a perfect solution. There just isn't. I mean, when is there in life a perfect solution, right?
No.
But I do think that, it does do trans rights more harm than good when you're saying, okay, well, let's ignore these other people's feelings or right to safety or comfort at the expense of, political correctness or making us feel comfortable. Like, everyone should feel comfortable. Everyone should have rights. Everyone should feel okay. So I do think that this needs to be looked at as, if you're saying, I feel uncomfortable with this, not necessarily that you're transphobic, and just kind of come to a solution and talk about it. I don't know. It's just very difficult. Like when you were talking about with rugby and that women are 20 to 30% more likely to get hurt, you shouldn't be scared to be called transphobic for saying, that is a concern for me, for my safety. I'm concerned about my safety in that situation. That shouldn't be transphobic. That should be okay. It should be okay to say my safety is important, because it is.
Yeah, of course.
So it's just a hard situation. Of course, I'm pro trans rights. I want everyone to have rights and to have equal rights. But I think we're going maybe a little bit too far, because right now trans rights are not where they should be. And because of that, I think people are pushing very, very hard for them, which is great, but it's not great when it's at the expense of other people's safety. So it's really complicated. It is. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that we're going to have conversations that are going to make people uncomfortable. And I think we need to be able to have these conversations without fear of such pushback, because that means that we're not making a solution that's ideal for everyone involved. It makes everyone involved feel comfortable and safe and like they're a person. So we just need to have some difficult conversations without fear.
Where do you think, because as I was reading through some of this, I also came across something about a lot of young women, especially a lot of them who have mental health problems, self-harm, end up part of, I don't know, I don't know if it's a cult, but end up part of, I don't know, a cult, or a religion, or a, I don't know, a groups, transgender groups, not necessarily in real life, but online and stuff like that. And some of them are as young as, 14, 13. And if they're a little bit older, like 16, they can go to the doctors and they can start taking hormones and stuff. And they're being wholeheartedly encouraged by this other trans community, which is fine because it's what they believe in. Also, I guess what I'm getting at is so obviously as well now, kids are going into school and saying, I'm no longer this, I am this. And the teachers have to call them a different name, which I'm not opposed to. But then a lot of these girls who have joined these groups early, especially when they're young, because who knows, because like obviously being a teenager it's a crazy time anyway for hormones, right? And I'm not saying for 1 minute that anybody who feels that way when they're a teen is wrong, because I'm not. How would I know? I wouldn't know. But all I know is it's a confusing time for everybody. It's a very confusing time for everybody, and finding out who you are and your sexuality. Again, and for some reason, it's a bigger problem with young women. Why is that? Why is it a bigger problem for young women who are trying to rush into changes that a lot of them are going on to regret when they become in their early 20s, mid 20s? Because obviously by then you know sexually, you know who you are for sure. A lot more. You're a lot more comfortable with your sexuality and who you are. And there's no, like, there are obviously we spoke about the scale before. And when your hormones are all over the place, that scale's completely skewed again. And when you're a teenager, it's completely skewed. For a lot of people, because I know plenty of people I went to school with who would claim that they are like 100% straight. Yeah. They had times at school where they looked at other guys and were like, oh, and that's completely normal. Or there were times where they were like, they didn't feel quite right in themselves, and they thought that they wanted to dress up as women. One of the people I know, one of my friends, actually told me this, who identifies as straight male, and he said that that's why, when there was an excuse like fancy dress parties, he'd always dress up as a woman, always. But he's like, I look back and he was like, it was just something that I went through. Now, when he was younger, now that's not saying that you shouldn't take anybody seriously who identifies as whatever. Absolutely not. But because it's acceptable now, and I'm not saying it's wrong that it's acceptable, are people making these choices and like doing hormone replacements and doing treatments for hormones at such a young age when your hormones are already all over the place? How do we control, like, how do we try and control, and how do we try and convince? Because doctors they're worried about what they say. They're at a point where they worry about what they say, from the stuff I've read. So they will end up prescribing it, and it's like, are we actually really looking after that? And again, the people who will suffer in the long run are not the people who knew and were 100% and they grew up and they still felt the same way. Not those people. It'll be the young straight non-trans women that end up suffering because of this. So I don't know what it's like. Do you think it's, because obviously you've been a young woman, still are a young woman. Do you think that's more of a natural sort of biological female thing to fall into traps of groups and being part of something, or being more susceptible to being more confused about their sexuality? Because I don't know. I can't really talk from that perspective, but it seems scary to me that everything I read. By the way, if anyone ever wants to call me up on any of this stuff, I can always put it out for you. It's just a lot of work to find every source that I've read through, but I can back all this up. Why is it happening more with young girls than young men?
Yeah, I'm not sure, and this is a very difficult topic for a few reasons. So one, I feel like something that would maybe help alleviate a lot of the issues we have with growing up in puberty and figuring ourselves out is to be less gendered overall. So for example, I grew up very much a tomboy, and by the time I got to 5th grade, I was made fun of a lot for that. So like not wearing makeup, I was made fun of, not having boobs yet, I was made fun of, just these various things, which then pushed me to try to be over feminine. So in middle school, I wore a ton of makeup. In high school, I wore a ton of makeup and high heels and skirts every single day. Right. So I think that if there was less gender pushed on us and less saying you're either this or these are the norms, if it was more fluid and it was more, pink is for boys too, blue is for girls too. If it was more flexible, maybe we would feel more comfortable taking the time to really just experiment around and not feel like, oh, well, I have to fit into this, or because I feel like I don't fit into this, I'm going to go here. I just think that overall it would help in general, not just in the trans situation, but in any situation. I know for me, it certainly would have helped. So I think I'd like to see just less gender in general. I just want to see a lot less like, oh, well, boys play with cars and girls play with dolls. I think that would give us the freedom to figure out who we really are, and without these like boundaries that are prescribed by culture. Culture says this is it. This is what you do if you're this versus this. Because I still don't feel like I fit into a 100% female role. I mean, I still feel like I am, again, it's a spectrum, just like sexuality. You have more masculine or more feminine on each side, according to whatever society says, and you fall somewhere along it, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And this is where you get into the issue of, it happens with men too, right? Toxic masculinity. Men can't enjoy these things, but it's a spectrum, and it's okay to fall somewhere along there. You don't have to say, well, this is the dividing line, or this is how it works. So I want to see a lot less of that. One of the things I can say is, even though I didn't grow up trans, this is a very sticky situation for me. And the reason I say that is, so one thing I can speak about from a female perspective that really gets me going is the fact that they would not take my uterus for a very, very long time, even though I had medical issues. So I was asking for a hysterectomy at the age of 18. I was in severe pain. I spent years in severe pain, going to hospitals, crying, having to be on serious painkillers, things that were not necessarily healthy for me. And I just had my uterus taken, last year, the year before last, very recently. And the reason they said no, the biggest reason was, you're going to want kids, which really makes me angry because
like they know.
I was like, I know I don't want kids. Like, how come I'm old enough to drink and drive and do whatever I want and make my own decisions and buy a house and put myself in debt for the rest of my life, and I'm not old enough to decide whether or not I want to raise another human being? And so that really frustrated me. So I feel kind of this connection with trans, because when you're like, I am this way, I feel this way, and somebody denies you, that's so frustrating, and it's so minimizing to say, no, you're not capable of making your own decisions. Now, having said that, there are certain implications in doing things young. So for example, they did leave my ovaries because if they had taken them, I would have went into early menopause, which isn't ideal. It's just not ideal for health reasons.
No,
so they left those, right? And I understand that. So there are certain implications of having these surgeries that there's going to be some downsides. So it's very complicated to navigate, because of course you don't want anyone's health to be at risk, but you also don't want their mental health to be at risk, because they aren't, their body's not matching up with what they identify as. So it's it's complicated. It's so complicated. And, you want to say, okay, well, let's wait until they're done maturing so that the hormones have a chance to, work on their body, and so that they don't have negative side effects from stopping that early. But if you take longer to transition, then is the transition as successful? I don't know. I genuinely don't know, right? Like if you start the hormones earlier, you're more likely to, like if you were born a man and you started female hormones earlier, you're more likely to probably look female or grow up female or feel female. I'm not sure, right? So it's so complicated because on one hand, you're like, okay, well maybe we should wait. But on the other hand, you're like, okay, well earlier is better. It's just, it's very confusing. It's very, I don't know the answer. I have no idea. I don't know how I feel about that. You know, I guess it's just,
I think
between trans people and their doctors, I guess. And
but if
however doctors feel, you know.
But if the doctors are in a position where they fear for saying the wrong thing, and I mean, if we need anybody to be talking straight more than anybody else, it's doctors and scientists, right? Because we need them, we rely on them, and they need to be talking straight.
Yeah. But then part of the problem is, again, you know, do they talk straight, right? Well, are they just, I mean, you know, because there are some people who say, I won't treat gay people because that's against my religion. Or for example, for me, I could not get a doctor to give me a hysterectomy because they assume because I was a woman that I would want kids. I mean, I literally had a doctor tell me, well, since your hormones are messed up, maybe you do really want kids and we just need to even your hormones out. And I just looked at her like, I can't with your level of fucking stupidity. So it's hard because we need them to be able to talk straight medical facts without fear, but they are just like any other human. They're biased.
Of course. I mean that is less of an issue here because you know, because 95% of people use the National Health Service here, whereas in the States it's private and the doctors have a right to not treat who they want. You cannot work for the NHS and do that. Like there's no preference. So, but the other thing is, with the American GPs, for instance, we know that some of them are paid to, they're paid to recommend or prescribe certain drugs. Which is a massive. I mean that it still blows my mind that that's allowed to happen. But I mean it happens. But so it's a little bit different, I guess, here from the States. And of course, of course there's been crooked scientists in the past who will take money to say the right thing about climate change or whatever. But I mean, we still have to rely on them. But what you said earlier about being a bit more fluid and being a bit like, hey, let's just like, especially when people are young, let's just forget the labels. Let's just do less labels, and let's just say, okay, if you want to feel that way, you can feel that way today, but we don't need to. Do we really need to act on it when these kids are 13, 14, 15? It just seems crazy to me. I mean, when you are, I mean, obviously your position where you're in great pain. I mean, I wouldn't want to see anybody in pain, and I don't think there should be any question. You know, if you are, if you're going through hell, every month, why? You know, why? Just end the suffering. Because there's other ways of having kids. You know, if you don't necessarily want to have them yourself, and you could actually really help a kid or somebody else or whatever.
I often brought that up when they were like, oh well, you know, you'd lose your ability to have children, and I was like, of course I don't want children. But then if they kept up with it, I'd be like, you know, it's really sad that you would push someone to have their own biological children when there are so many children that can be saved. Like that's really fucked up. And usually they'd stop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there are so many kids looking for good homes as well. So like, I it's going to be interesting to see how things turn out and unfold. And I want to reiterate while we've been talking about this that obviously me and Nick are completely for trans rights. I don't agree in treating. I don't agree in treating, as long as, especially whilst it has no impact on other people, especially that. Why would anyone care? Why would anyone care what you want to do? And if you want me to call you a different name, I'll call you a different name. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. It makes no difference to me. Makes no difference to how I would talk to you. But pushing back against these issues to do with sport, to do with change, to do with loads of different stuff, actually, pushing against it is not coming to some sort of arrangement or compromise or solution. Yeah. It doesn't help. I mean, we know there are people who are completely fascist, and we have to fight those people. But to do that, we have to talk to them. We have to, whether we like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they'll never listen, and maybe that generation will die. You know, eventually they will. But we have to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
So, our main topic today, Nick, and I feel like you've done a nice piece of research on this as well. We're going to be talking about
something I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I got the vibe that you were very passionate about this just through talking to you since we started doing this.
Mm-hmm.
About security and privacy. I actually did the dissertation for my degree on internet security. Very specific.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, very specific though. Very specific. But this is something that is it's massive and affects each and every person on the planet now, pretty much.
Yeah.
There are very few people it doesn't affect.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's start off with something simple. There are certain websites, certain things where you have to prove who you are or your address.
Mm-hmm.
You don't like doing that, Nick?
I don't mind. I don't think. It depends. So this is a very complicated one, right? So like, let's say my Facebook were banned and they were like, hey, we need your driver's license. I don't know that I want to send Facebook my fucking driver's license, just to be honest. I just don't.
Right.
I know like there have been cases of companies asking for stuff like that. So like, am I okay with giving like, for example, my address and stuff so that they can build my credit card? Like, yeah, okay, sure. I understand that that's what you need. But yeah, there are lines. I think there are lines, and it depends very much on the company and what they're asking for and why they're asking for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a hard question because I guess it depends on the situation. It's very situational.
Yeah, okay. So let's make it a little bit more complicated then, or more precise. So so you obviously when you signed up to Twitch, you have to share your bank details, right, to get paid. Or you can actually no, you can get paid alternatively, or you used to be able to. You can get paid by check, I think, or you used to be able to, but it would take longer, and then there was more of a fee for it, right? So if you want to get paid your highest amount, you got to declare your bank details. Now this is different to just giving like your credit card number, right? Because your credit card number, one credit cards are covered, right? So you pay on a credit card, you're covered. If it doesn't arrive, if something happens, whatever, if you've got it on credit, you're covered. Well, at least you are in the UK. Debit card is different, but say that forget the payment part. Say that to sign up to Twitch and be a streamer, you had to give your address. How would you feel comfortable with that?
Honestly, I don't know. So if we're forgetting the payment, let's say there was no reason to give that information, right? Like you don't get paid. I don't think I would. Because then it's why would you need it at that point?
Yeah.
So it would be a strange thing to ask for if they could make a good case for why they needed it, you know. But I mean, the thing is, like, I gave it to them for payment reasons, right?
Of course,
and that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But if there were no need for payment reasons, I mean, the more information you give out, the more likely you are to get like doxxed, or, you know, Twitch could be hacked, information can be, you know, gotten out there, right? There was that whole thing with one of the credit reporting agencies in America not too long ago.
I didn't see that.
With all of that information getting out.
Oh, right.
So yeah. So, you know, I probably wouldn't, just because it's like, okay, now I'm giving this information out. There's a possibility of a security breach. and this information could get out, and for what am I getting for giving you this information? I think that's kind of something that people need to think more about, is your information is very much a transactional thing.
Yeah.
And you need to be getting something out of whatever you're doing, right? Like don't just give your address up for something that's not worth it.
Yeah, because 9 times out of 10 they'll be getting something out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Like they will. So yeah. So I spoke to Nick about this last week when we were planning on doing the security thing. About so the supermarkets in the UK. There's 4 main supermarkets, and in the mid-90s they all came out with these loyalty cards. And this was before most people had the internet as well. We're talking like 95, 96. So the internet was around, but most people didn't have it. And you would basically pay for your shopping, they'd swipe your card, and on the database was your name, your address, and what you bought. That's it, right? And people were saying, this is great. We've got, we're getting money back on our shopping, and it feels like we're being loyal and getting something for our loyalty. And there was nothing. People had no idea that all the supermarkets were using it for marketing purposes to find out exact habits, trends of different age groups, different genders, and all these sorts of things. And there was never really, when this was all found out, there was never really any uproar or anything. When it came to light, when people realized what was happening, it never really came to light, and people just signed up. They just signed up. Name, address, yeah. When have you ever had to go in a shop and give your name and address just for a simple transaction to buy food? You don't. But people were just oh, I can get money off. Well, sign me up. And there was no legislation in place then either about there was legislation in place, but very dated legislation about keeping people's credentials. But now it's more of I don't know if now sometimes if I buy something from a shop in real life shop, and they'll say, do you want a receipt? If I say yes, they'll ask for an email address, right? That's so common now in England. I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, we just need an address so we can give you the receipt. Why? Why can't you just give me the receipt? Sometimes it's because they email it to you, which I kind of understand. But sometimes it's not
eco-friendly, which is great.
Yeah, but then sometimes you can't get the receipt without giving your email address. Yeah, so strange. So I just make one up usually, but
yeah,
I it's never really bothered me that much, and I don't think about it too much. But I also can't hold my hand up and say I've read every terms and conditions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who has? When you've signed up for something, who's read through all that small print? Nobody. Only on Twitch. Only on Twitch. Because it's so important.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
No, go on.
So what I find interesting? If your significant other constantly knew where you were, just always knew where to find you, always knew where you were, I think most people would feel fairly uncomfortable with that. If there's no way to have your own space, I can't go to a coffee shop without Snack Daddy knowing where I am. Now, of course, I'm okay with Snack Daddy knowing where I am. I share, we share location, so that if anything happens, we have that for safety reasons. But if, that's an optional thing. If I had no option and somebody knew where I was constantly, that's very uncomfortable. And I think people need to realize when they're giving out this information, that's essentially what you're doing, right? You're telling all of these companies, hey, if you wanted to find me,
I'm here.
You can find me here. When you have Google Maps and Google Maps uses your information, you're basically telling Google, hey, this is where I am at all times, unless you don't have your phone on you or you deactivate it. But even then, like we were talking about earlier, DuckDuckGo shared on their Twitter that Google still tracks app users when they've opted out. So that even if you set your settings to opt out, they're still tracking you. They're finding ways to get around that. So when you think about the fact that it's so uncomfortable if your spouse constantly knew where you were and, you can't take that back, right? Like it's become very hard to take that information back once you've given it out. So, why are we okay with strangers knowing all of this about us? Why are we okay with strangers knowing constantly where to find us, what we're interested in, what we want to buy, what stage of life we're in, whether or not we're pregnant, whether or not we're married? Like, it's just, I feel like the line has slowly been pushed and pushed and blurred to the point where we don't even think about it. But when you really think about it, it's strange. It's really strange.
Right. Yeah. So tell me a bit more about, so sharing location is something I've never done. I've never ever done. Not because I'm opposed to it. I just haven't done it. So I don't know much. I don't know much about that. So is there a way of? I understand, like you just explained, why? Because of an emergency, right? And that makes perfect sense. But is there a way? So can you set it so that yes, you're going to share it, but only if they ask to see it?
Yeah. So there, and Google will send me regular emails, saying like, hey, like you have this still turned on. Do you want to turn this off?
Right.
So there are ways about that. I personally leave it on, just because I know that I'm a very small female, and I like to go places alone, like the bookstore or the coffee shop. I like to kind of like have my alone time, really just enjoy, my personal time. So I leave it on. But I've considered that the trade-off for me is worth it for the most part.
Yeah.
It does kind of make you think like, okay, well, by leaving this on, what is Google getting out of this? What are they selling? What do they have? So I'd like to see, what I'd really like to see is more legislation on this, because I want to be able to have, Snack Daddy know where I am at all times. And, if I go missing, it's like, hey, this is the last location.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed I don't, right? But you never know. And I want to be able to share that without also putting myself at more risk of having my information leaked or having companies know constantly where I am, because that's just not cool. So, and I understand you have to give something to get something. I just don't understand why that something we have to give is every single detail of our life. I don't like it.
So if you look up where Joel is, or Joel looks up where you are, does it tell the other person that they've looked for them?
No, it just shows us constantly on maps.
Right.
So, when you pull open like Google Maps, and you could put like pins and locations and stuff, I can just always see his dot.
Right. So can you set it so that, because say, because like say you did it with a friend and like in an ideal world, friends never fall out or whatever. Say you fell out and they wanted to know where you were.
You can revoke that.
You can take it out. But what I mean is there a way of making it so that they can only try and look if it's important, like if there's an emergency, and it actually alerts them that they've actually seen your location? Because that would seem a lot more secure to me. Because then rather than just like because I've been out with jealous people in the past, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the times I didn't know how bad it was for quite some time. So then if I knew that they were looking at where I was 12 times a day, I mean, you know that's not happening. Like,
no, we like never look at each other's location. We forget that we have it turned on.
But
which is the only time you want to share it. Don't share it with someone who's jealous.
But that's the thing though. But some people you don't know though.
Yeah, you don't.
So that would make that would be, I think, if you can't do that, I think that would be a great thing, because then it's like, if they kept checking it, you'd be like, why? There was no, what did you need? There was no emergency. Rather than just like, because if somebody wants to know where you are and it's urgent, they'll probably try and call you anyway, right? And then if that doesn't work, then you'd be like, well, I tried calling you and like, so I the thing, and check the maps and check you're all right, and then that'd be okay, and you'd know that they checked it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know.
I do think there's potential for a safer app here, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not like, some people say, oh, well, microchips and tracking you. Like, of course, nobody ever wants to go there. We don't want that to happen, right? We don't want microchips that track us.
No.
And the fact that Google has my information, that's definitely not ideal. The fact that if you were with someone jealous, they could check your information constantly, especially if you were with a jealous spouse who's abusive. You would never want that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I do think there is room for improvement, which is why I want to see more legislation. I'd like to see, more apps be able to come out with technology that would be useful to us with as little negatives as possible. And the only way I think that's going to happen is if legally that's how it has to happen, to be honest. And if I were able to pay for us to see each other's location or to know it, and have extra benefits, like nobody else can see it, even Google isn't privy to that for like somehow maybe it's just encrypted or they can't access it on their end or whatever. I certainly would, but it sucks that you would have to pay just to keep your information. But again, I suppose they have to make money somehow. I do not want it to be off of my information.
Yeah, so we had I think a law passed in the UK called GDPR. I can't remember what that stands for, but it was basically, it meant that you had to consent to websites using cookies.
Yeah.
There's loads of different parts to it, but that was the biggest thing, and that was the biggest change. So I don't know if that's happened in the States. So now, if you're in the UK going through a UK ISP, you go onto a new website that wants to send cookies, or wants to check your cookies, you have to agree to it.
Yeah.
It flashes up, and the website has to ask you. I don't know whether that happens in the States. That was one, like, that was moving forward. I felt like that was a really positive, change.
Yeah, I don't know if that's been changed legally here. I do know that almost every website I go to now, I assume that something's been done legally. I know there was a whole thing with it, but I think I was just going through some stuff at the time and not really keeping up with it. But yeah, I do get asked about my cookies. One thing I really, really desperately want to see is the ability to remove your information from the internet, because right now that's not an option for us. And there are some places where legally you can submit a request to remove your information.
Yeah.
I really want to see that happen here. I really do. I think that would be fantastic, because quite frankly, we grew up in a time where we had technology as children.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Children and teenagers don't make the best decisions. Sometimes they post things that are stupid or embarrassing. And it would be nice to not have to worry about that, or not have to worry about a future employer seeing a message that, is taken out of context. Maybe you made a joke that was stupid or isn't time appropriate. And, or maybe you were having a frustrating day and you vented, or one of those people who constantly posted songs about how you were feeling. Like when you're going through a breakup and it's constantly convenient.
I definitely did that as a 14-year-old.
Yeah, I think we all did. Like, nobody wants that shit out there. Nobody wants your employer to be able to see that,
No,
So it would be nice to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try and find Nick's MySpace page now and see, like.
Yeah, it's gone. I tried finding it. It's gone. It's gone.
Yeah, so
for the best.
One of the worst offenders for taking your information is Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Facebook is, and they've been called out for it several times, yet it's not having the growth that it did, but it's still expanding a lot more slowly than it was, just because there's just so many accounts now.
Yeah.
Yet, I read an article with an interview with Mark Zuckerberg where he admits to covering up his own webcam on his laptop.
Yeah.
Now, to me, if Mark Zuckerberg's saying I cover up the camera on my laptop, obviously he's in a position where any information on him is going to be worth a lot more money than me or you. But so you would have to be more careful in that position. Any sort of fame or importance.
Yeah.
You're going to need to be careful. But if he is not confident, and probably the most famous programmer of our time, of our, and certainly of our generation. That does worry me a little bit. And that's probably because he knows through what they're doing through Facebook, because how they're making their money, right? Information's worth so much money.
Yeah. Because, and even if you're not, necessarily famous right now, like when people have access to your webcam, let's say you're a teenager and then you grow up to be president. I mean, it feels like anything you do can bite you in the ass, which it can, but to an extreme, to where anything you do, even if it's in private and you shouldn't have anyone watching, you're in your room alone, that can come back, and that's uncomfortable, right? Like there was the Black Mirror episode, I think, where they caught someone, having alone adult time.
That's very well put, Nick.
Thank you. I was trying to think about that.
She meant to say masturbating is what she meant.
I did. Yes. That is what he was doing. And they recorded him, and then they were like, sending him emails like, hey, like do this or else we'll show this. Like,
yeah,
let's say, everyone does it, right? We're human. And that comes back and you're president. People are like, yeah, well, we're going to release this. Like that situation shouldn't be allowed to happen. There's so many security risks now, which then gets me thinking about deep fakes. I don't know. That wasn't on my docket to talk about today, but now I'm like, maybe we'll add it.
Yeah, well, so there are journalists whose job it is to dig out dirt from past, from years gone by. Because I guess, so I signed up to Facebook in 2006, September 2006, the first time I went to uni, because you needed a uni email to open it up at the time, and obviously. Even if I'd read all the terms and conditions then, they will be completely different now. And what you need to sign up is probably completely different now. And it's obviously completely changed. But what, as a 19-year-old, what was I sharing and what was I talking about on there?
Yeah.
As opposed to, what I think and what I say now. Like, I've never gone back and just like checked what I was saying, status updates and whatnot. Like, I've no idea. I can't remember. I probably said some stupid stuff. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Nothing like, no hate or anything like that, but probably some stuff that I probably wouldn't say now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just some stupid stuff.
Yeah. Stupid, emotional, embarrassing. I mean, we all have said something.
So maybe these things should be time sensitive then, and after so long they're just like automatically deleted. I think that would save so much trouble. Like Twitter maybe. Give the tweets a couple of years and then they're gone, because the amount of people that have been pulled up for a tweet that they sent 10 years ago is phenomenal. Yeah. Absolutely phenomenal, especially because Twitter seems to be the place that everyone airs their grievances with the world for some reason. I mean, they do on Facebook, but Twitter is just like, as we've discovered before, it's just like a cesspool, man, of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
People trying to push their point and not listen at all. Like people just don't want to debate anything on there. Like, they're not prepared to listen. But
well, I know that a lot of people will say, don't put something on the internet that you are not prepared to be there forever. And that's good advice. But that advice, I feel like, is really short-sighted when you think that there are people who are basically living their lives on the internet. There are people who are online personalities, and you're on there so much. You can't sit there and think about everything you're going to say. Like the truth is going to come out. Who you are as a person is going to come out.
Yeah.
And people aren't perfect. And sometimes you're going to say something dumb or wrong or not the best thing. So when people say don't put anything out there that you don't want out there forever, well, those are the people who aren't constantly having to say something online.
Yeah.
So you're going to say something not brilliant at some point, and to be able to take that back to a degree would be really good. At least after I agree, time sensitive, maybe something you said years ago, you can now delete that because you're a different person, and actually delete it. So it's a complicated situation.
Yeah, maybe make it so you can, or just make it so you can choose, right? Everything from 2017 before, just like wipe it. Do you want to wipe pictures? No, I just want to wipe comments. I want to wipe status updates. I want to keep my pictures.
Yeah, which is really why we need laws on it. Because, for example, I have deleted my Facebook. I deleted it a few years ago, and I'm so happy it's gone. But that information, like, it can still be out there. People could have saved it and redistributed on another site. Other search engines can index it, you know. And I know it, like, you can't go through other people's computers and take those files. But it'd be nice if there was a law where you could search the internet and have that removed from other websites too, and not just Facebook, because I don't know where that information has gone now, right? So for example, if I delete my Facebook, maybe I want the stuff on my Facebook to no longer be available through a search engine, or to no longer be available through Google image search. And I don't know that that's taken off. I'm not sure.
Yeah. It's funny when that the Google image search, I've not used it because it scares the shit out of me, to be honest. Just trying to get and bear in mind, I've got a degree in computer science. It really scares me. Like, it really scares me. I mean, and I'm not, for the most part, I'm not that bothered about my privacy, and perhaps I should be more bothered. But that's something that does really it really does make me worry that you can just say, oh, you could just find anybody just from finding people from pictures, finding out where they live from pictures. In the UK, if you are registered to vote, your address is on the internet. Your name and address is on the internet.
Yep, same here.
You can opt out. But
you can opt out, but there are other websites that have that information. I actually went on a spree finding these websites and submitting a request to be removed from all of these websites. But there are so many. There are so many. You would not believe the amount of people who have not only your address, but your phone number, your family members' names, your usernames that are commonly used. I mean, it's fucking ridiculous, the information that somebody can find on you through these websites. So to me, that's a problem. Those should not exist.
Yeah,
that is not okay.
Shouldn't exist. And
it shouldn't be an opt-out. It should be an opt-in at the very least.
Yeah, and who would do that?
Yeah.
Why would you? Why would you? Why would you opt in? And that's like, because when I found out about this when I was like 14, maybe a bit, like 13, 14. I used to wind my friends up by saying, "Oh, I bet I can guess where you live," and just find their address. No malice, of course. Yeah. And they'd be like, "How'd you know that?" And I'd wind them up and not tell them. Then eventually, I'd be like, "Well, it's on the internet. Everybody's is, unless your mum and dad have specifically said that they want to opt out of it." That's a scary thing, especially. Like, I thought about it a bit more since getting to the point where I can apply for a partner and stuff. It's like I used to have a webcam that pointed out the window that I stream in to show like the weather and stuff. Yeah. But then I decided that was a bad idea.
Absolutely.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think there's a high chance of somebody coming around and finding exactly where I am, but it's made me think. You know, if it grows, if it carries on growing, then it's maybe something that I want my information to be more hidden, and maybe I need to be more secure. Just because I saw a story about there's a girl who lives in London or just outside of London, partner streamer, quite a big streamer, and I forget her name. She's basically been being stalked by one of the viewers. Turning up at near where she lives, like not knocking on the door and stuff, but just like sitting outside and like. It all got a bit weird because I looked at the comments and we talk about the Twitter thing, and then people were saying, well, why haven't you got a gun? Why can't you get a gun in England? And it was like, and then that just turned into something else, because it was like, well, because like, and then they were like, well, and I was just like, I'm not blaming that girl for 1 second. She doesn't. That shouldn't happen. But it just made me think. You know, maybe. And it's probably. You know, I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, because of course it happens to men and women. But it's more likely to happen to a woman, or it happens more to women. We know that. Same with the Me Too stuff. It happens to men as well, absolutely, but it happens to women more. It just made me think a little bit about not just me, maybe you know, how I share like other family members. You know, if they're never part of the stream, then should I be talking about them?
Yeah.
Should I be mentioning any friends like by first name or anything like that? No, probably not.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, not just that, but so something that I've done that I know maybe a lot of people do or don't, I'm not sure. I haven't really talked to people, but I use an email address where I was able to sign up for it, and I didn't have to give my name. I didn't have to give my address. I didn't have to give my birth date, no information. And they don't even have access, like they aren't able to find out my password, I believe. Right. So there are certain email websites that are very secure and much more secure than, like, for example, using Gmail.
Yeah.
And then I've also, like, I have a separate profile on my computer for playing games and stuff like that and streaming so that I don't have anything accidentally pop up or any files that I could get to that would dox me. But one of the things that, and some people probably do that as well. I'm not sure. If you don't, I mean, it's definitely a good precaution. Yeah. One of the things that a lot of people don't think about, and that I didn't really think about so much in the beginning, is some people will tell me, oh yeah, this is my brother, this is my sister who are watching, or these are my friends. Keep in mind that, so for example, I use Nick Levels Up. I don't use that on any personal information that's connected to my birth date or my you know, real name or anything like that, aside from what like Twitch and stuff has, like companies have. But I'm not out there like signing up for sketchy websites with the username Nick Levels Up and then like my personal information.
No, she uses a burner one for that.
Yeah. But, you know, for your brother or your sister or your family member or your friend, let's say they use the username, you know, Fruity Pebbles 91 or something cute, which sounds weird. I had someone in my chat ask me Fruity Pebbles or Cocoa Pebbles the other day, so like that's on my mind. But let's say that's their username and they use it for everything. And it happens that they use it for an account where they've shared some real life information and they shared a little bit more here. Maybe they didn't share their address, but they shared, you know, some incriminating evidence or something that where people could find them. Like, you gather enough breadcrumbs, attach enough usernames, and, you know, people can find you. So let's say you do have, like, I don't know, your sister in your chat, and she has a username that she's used for a million things, and people can find her and dox her through that. Well, then they can get to you through that. It's internet security really needs to be taken seriously, because you would not believe how many ways there are to really find someone. And you're right. Like this woman, you know, if she's being stalked, like who knows where that person got it from, but women are more likely to have that issue. So it's gotten to the point where, you know, if I have somebody in my chat who I know in real life, I'm like, you have to use a different username, you know? And that sucks that you would have to do that. But realistically, the internet is a dangerous place. And I just think that we need to be more careful. We really do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I had a credit card once years ago, and I'd used it probably two or three times, I think maybe. I just paid the balance off straight away, so there was no, like, I didn't even really think about it because I knew there was nothing on it. Or if I did get anything, it was more for stuff that I thought was sketchy, because you can always get your money back if it's on credit, part of the Consumer Credit Act in the UK. But then I got a call from the credit card company, and they were like, "Oh, can we ask you a few questions?" Like standard security stuff, you know, none of the what's your card number and all that, you know, it was genuine. Because I was quite aware of like phishing scams from a young age. And they were like, have you made these transactions? There was two separate transactions, one for like it was like 50 pence and 45 pence to Muslim charities. They were like, have you made these transactions? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, don't worry about it, we'll sort it. And obviously they were taken off.
Yeah.
But I was like how? Like how have they even, like, I've used it 2 or 3 times, and there was nothing. These were all like, they'd already been used in reputable places. I mean, it was just because I was covered, like and being a little bit paranoid that I'd used it, but they'd somehow got hold of it. So like you say, people, if they want to find it, they will find it. So you got to be super careful. I had no idea, and I like to think, especially then, that I was up on the security thing, but
and that's pro tip about the bank. Just since we're talking about that, if your bank does call you, you can always say, "Hang on, I'll call you back at the official number." That's a good one. And then if they're like, no need, probably hang up. But yeah, I mean, we are putting ourselves out there. That's the thing. Like, some people would consider streaming stupid. They're like, why would you put yourself out there that much? Why would you give that much information? But, we should be able to do this securely and safely. We should have more laws that protect us. But because we don't, I just think that we need to be really careful about it. We shouldn't have to stop streaming because of safety reasons. We should be more protected. But I think we really need to, at this current moment, we really need to take our protection in our own hands because nobody else is.
Yeah, absolutely. For the time being, like I say, the GDPR thing in the UK, I feel like it's a step in the right direction. Yeah,
definitely.
So let's talk about keeping ourselves safe and how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So we spoke a little bit about VPNs, me and Nick have in the past. I use a VPN that was decent value at the time, for a long period, called NordVPN, and you use something different, right, Nick?
I actually use NordVPN as well.
Oh, you do? I thought you said you used DuckDuckGo.
Yeah, so DuckDuckGo is a search engine.
Right.
So when you use DuckDuckGo, they don't track all this.
It's like a proxy search engine. Yeah. So you use NordVPN as well. So for anybody who doesn't know, VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. And what that does is it basically, as far as any website or wherever you are on the internet is concerned, you are visiting there from another server. Because every device you have has its own IP address. So that way you can be completely tracked. Because Nick's computer has an IP address, my computer has an IP address, my phone has an IP address. All these devices are connected to the internet. Your TV, if it's a smart TV, it has an IP address. They can all be traced. So what the Virtual Private Network does, or VPN, is you connect to the VPN, and then you browse from that server. So as far as the website's concerned, you're browsing from that server. One of the problems that's come up recently, though, is that so Netflix have started blocking a lot of these VPNs. It's one of the first things. They've started to say, no, you can't use the VPN, because people were using VPNs to watch like US only shows, right?
Yeah.
Because they'd only got them licensed for US or UK or whatever. So they've started to block. Well, as far as I know, they block all the big ones are blocked now, like on Netflix. I don't see that as a huge deal, because there's not a lot really you'd probably want to cover up, but they will still take your information and what you're watching and what's trending. But for the whole and most websites, I just recommend using one. Just use one. Whether you are literally just checking your emails and just browsing and buying the odd thing, just use one anyway. Just use it.
Yeah. So I actually kind of want to talk about VPNs as they relate to Twitch, because one of the things is, as a streamer, do you actually need a VPN? What exactly does it help? Because, we all kind of have this idea we should use VPNs, right? But what exactly is it helping as a streamer? So there are a few things that Snack Daddy and I have thought of. For one, it protects your IP address from being scraped by links. So if you click a link on your chat, if somebody shares a link and you're opening it, you might open it off stream to make sure they aren't putting anything on your stream that's really, really bad. But even if you're opening it off stream, they can have like redirects, stuff like that, where they are taking your IP, they are taking your information.
Yes.
So when you use a VPN, they aren't able to get your information by sharing links with you. The other thing is if you're joining another person's game or if somebody is joining your game. As streamers, a lot of times we have our viewers play with us or we play with our viewers, and they are able to get your information off that as well. So those are the two big ones I've come up with for using a VPN as a streamer or even as a viewer, right? Maybe you want to play in a community channel, but you still want to be protected and not have your IP address shared with a bunch of people that you don't know. So those are the big ones. I don't know if you have any others, but those are the big ones I thought of.
No, I mean that's the main reason. I mean, if somebody really knows what they're doing, and I mean the people who hack other people's machines, it's not a part-time thing. You have to be not one, you have to be really clued up. Two, you have to be doing it all the time because security is constantly changing and things are constantly changing. I watched a documentary about hackers once, and they are doing this 18 hours a day, like to stay up on things. And the top that, you know, some of them are going on even less sleep, and the people who are trying to hack like the biggest corporations. So you think about people who just might want to hack your computer, your PC. It's still not easy. Not anybody can do it, and you need a lot of experience to know what to do. And it's not even people that you think that are tech savvy and tech wise. Probably most of them do not know how to do it. I do not know how to do it. I know to a certain extent, but no, it's not easily done. But once they're in, that's it. They've got everything. Yeah, they've got absolutely everything, and they could get in. They could install something called a keylogger. So a keylogger is a software that literally logs every keystroke. So if they can sign in and out to your PC when it's on, they've installed a keylogger on and hidden it, made it run in the background, and you've been buying stuff with your credit card, your debit card, or you've been typing in passwords. It's done. It's all done. It's there. And this is another reason why it's incredibly important to activate the what do they call it? What do they call it? Like the Authy app, you know, like to sign into Twitch, you get a code to your phone.
Two-factor authentication.
Two-factor authentication. Yeah, that's another reason why that is incredibly important, because if somebody does get your password, they've still got to get to your device. So I use my phone, for instance, and get a one-time code, and then that's another thing they've got to do altogether, because the phone has a separate IP address again. So
absolutely. Always have your two-factor turned on. Always, if there is an option, have it on.
Some people, in my opinion, some websites are doing three-factor now as well. I don't know if that's overzealous, but I definitely recommend if they have the opportunity. I mean, like, if somebody
if it's like photos or something, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly if you keep photos of family members and children or anything like that, just be extra vigilant. And if you can keep your personal photos in particular, if you can keep them, say you want to store them, back them up to an external hard drive and keep it separate, and just get them when you need them. Don't keep them on your PC. But then again, if you're taking all the right steps, you know, you got your VPN, you're keeping up to date with the latest security risks, then you should be fine. But what's better than just taking a minute to be safe?
Yeah, there's no harm in it. And I think this is another case for having two PCs as an online presence, whether you're like a streamer or YouTuber. Of course, not everyone can do that. And if you are smaller, you probably don't need to worry about it. But I mean, I know if I get to a point where I'm big enough where maybe I should be concerned about potentially some of these issues, I would certainly want a second PC that has literally like nothing but my work on it, that doesn't have, I don't log into my bank account. I don't log in and buy anything. I don't, message family or friends or log into personal email. No. I think that if you are, a bigger streamer, that is certainly something to look for, or like a YouTuber definitely. Who has millions and millions of views. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Why not? If you can afford it, why not?
Yeah. Because as well, if you're at that level, you're always responsible for the content on your account, whether it's compromised or not. If you've not taken, if they consider that you've not taken cautious enough steps to protect your account and stop it getting in the hands of somebody else, and it does, and they put out content that is against any of the terms of service, then you'll just be banned. That'll be it.
Yeah.
And you have to start getting it. You'll just be banned because you're responsible for the content on your channel. I mean, if there's an extreme case where one of the really good hackers got in and got your account and it was at Twitch's end, that's something different. But if you've left yourself open, then Twitch will argue that you weren't responsible enough to hold the account.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the VPN is a great idea for anybody.
Yeah, the VPN
and
also, that
two-factor.
was the one other thing I wrote down, is it can improve your speeds because it can find the fastest routes between you and Twitch.
Yes.
Because a lot of links are constantly changing. So the VPN, because it is using those links so frequently for so many people, usually it can find a faster way to connect. So sometimes it can improve your speeds. Yeah. Sometimes, right?
Yeah. Well, I've certainly had no issues using the VPN and streaming at the same time ever. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no issue for me. But I mean, I have really good speeds anyway, so I've never really had to look into it because it's always just worked fine. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, it's just as fast. But
yeah, and I did pull up DuckDuckGo just so that, because I feel like I'm not going to explain it the way that DuckDuckGo would explain it,
right?
Because it's been a little while since I've looked at their verbiage and what they exactly say that they do. Because it is a search browser, so I use it in place of Google. So they say that they don't ever store your personal information. They don't collect or share any of your personal information. They don't follow you around with ads, which I can contest to. There are no ads, which is really nice. Yeah. They don't store your search history. So they have nothing to sell to advertisers or track you across the internet.
Yeah.
They don't track you in it or out of private browsing mode. So that has been a thing with Google. Google's been caught tracking certain things in private browsing mode.
Yeah, incognito they call it, don't they?
Yep. Yeah. So DuckDuckGo does not do that. Other search engines track your searches even when you're in private browsing mode. We don't track you, period. So I use it. I love it. I have never had an issue. I have no complaints. I love the stuff that they share to their Twitter. It's clear that they're very passionate about this. If you look up the way, because a lot of people are going to say, well, how do they make money then? If you look up the way they make money, like they do have a business plan. But it's something that I'm comfortable with. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's something that I'm comfortable with. It's certainly a lot better than Google. So, that would be my recommendation, is to certainly, if you're concerned at all, use DuckDuckGo. Yeah,
because obviously, I would assume, although I don't know anything about DuckDuckGo, I've heard of it. But I would assume that the minute they probably have some sort of Patreon or crypto thing that you can donate with, or maybe not. But if they normally, these companies like Facebook, for instance, wasn't making any money for a long time. Yeah. There's normally and I'm not saying that their ideal thing is to go the same way, because that would just kill them, because the people who are, but obviously before Facebook had ads and was selling information, it was not making money. There was no money to be made. So most of these businesses, like Spotify, I believe, still isn't making money. But the idea is one day there's a plan for it to make money, and you get wealthy investors that back it. And yeah, it's it's probably something that I will use more, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I recommend giving it a try. I mean, I personally really like it. I have no complaints whatsoever. I use it on my phone as well. The other nice thing with the phone, when you do have to use another browsing app, you have to close the windows one by one usually. With DuckDuckGo, they have a fire button, and I click it, it deletes everything. So they literally, a little flame comes up at the bottom of the screen. I don't know. I just feel more secure using it, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, but the other thing about VPN I forgot to say. So with NordVPN, you can also use it. You can also use it for your phone as well. Under the same under the same subscription. You can use it for your phone as well.
Yeah. And speaking of phones, just in case you're a streamer and, sometimes we don't think about this. If your phone is in camera range and it's face up, don't forget that people can see that and get somebody's first and last name who's calling. Make sure your phone is check your surroundings before you go live. Don't let any personal information, there was that one thing where some guy literally zoomed in on a K-pop star's like iris or something and got the street location of where she was. Just insane stuff. So make sure even if you're wearing glasses, like it can reflect back. Yeah. Be very careful about the information that's around you. Really check your surroundings and what you're looking at on your screen.
Yeah, you can give away things like really, really easily, like super easily.
Yeah, and unintentionally
if you're not careful. A big one, because I know this happened to PewDiePie some years ago, is that because obviously like sometimes I will get up like a web page or a video to look up on YouTube on the stream. Mm-hmm. PewDiePie actually doxed his search history, which was full of porn, basically. Obviously, accidentally, but it was something to do with, say it was something personal like address or something like that. Then the guy probably would have had to move, right? Be really careful, especially if you're a streamer and you're sharing like your desktop or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Another reason to use DuckDuckGo as your search engine.
There you go. We're not affiliated with DuckDuckGo, by the way.
I'm not. They can. Hey, if they want to be, what's up?
We're here.
I'm here.
We're here. It's difficult because the security thing is difficult because there's just so much that you have, there's so much that you have to say, there's so much that you have to give away, and that line is like where it's pretty obvious where you probably don't need to, but then there's lines where they're asking for stuff and it'll be like, oh no, you didn't enter your address, and you're like, well, what would you need my address for? If you're not buying something, if it's not being delivered to your house. But then there's sometimes where it's like they'll ask for your address and you sign up and then you pay with PayPal, and it's like, or they only use PayPal and then you have to put your address in PayPal and that's the actual invoice, and that's the thing. You're like, well, why did you need my address the first time?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because as you were talking, that was my first thought. Is I use PayPal for a lot of stuff, and so it's like when I enter my address, I'm like, but PayPal has it.
Yeah,
I mean, there's got to be a way to make it so that you can have your address stored on one secure site that you're comfortable with, and then you're able to get your packages and stuff like that. You would think I don't know what it is, right? I don't have any idea, but I feel like there just has to be a way, and I would love that. That would be really exciting.
Yeah, and with the two-factor authentication thing, I think going forward, I mean, if my bank app on my phone, see, I don't go do my banking on the PC. I don't need to, because I can do it on my phone, and that requires my fingerprint to sign in. Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong, on the back of that, somebody has your fingerprint is stored, but it's more secure than a password. So it's like that's a no-brainer for me. That'll probably be something that we see more of. But like you say, because you get the eye recognition.
Yeah.
And there will be a way of making sure that it's being taken from a live eye rather than just having a picture of your eye. All this technology get better, but the two-factor authentication for me is a no-brainer. The extra bit of time occasionally when you have to re-sign in, because that's the thing on Twitch, you don't have to keep signing in if you don't want to. But
absolutely.
But yeah,
speaking of passwords, do you use LastPass out of curiosity, or any of those sorts of?
No. So I've always I had one. I did have one, but it was when it wasn't LastPass, but it's when they were quite new. When these websites were quite new and software was quite new, And I remember, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I had issues. But I'm talking a few years ago.
Yeah.
Like, and I had issue. I can't remember what it was for some reason. But But yeah, I mean, password wise, like I have a system for passwords so that I'm not just using the same password every time. Because obviously, online you get so many, you sign up for so much stuff, and you need passwords for so many things that obviously people end up using the same password, because how could you remember them all otherwise, unless you wrote them all down, which people don't want to do. So I adopted a system for like each website basically, or each app.
Yeah, so Snapchat does that as well.
Yeah, so that it would be different every time. And to figure out if you got, and so that if you got one, so it wouldn't necessarily just be like the first 3 characters of that, like that website's name, because obviously if they got hold of the other password, they'd see that, and then they'd work that out pretty quickly, because these people that are doing it are smart. Obviously they're smart. But there's different ways of doing it, so that you can say, well, if it's got these characters in, we use those. If it's not these, there's different ways. And
you can combine them as well. Like every vowel is capitalized. Yeah. You know, every third letter is a comma. Like, I mean, there are so many millions of ways to. Snapchat does that as well. Yeah.
It's and as I say, you're probably never gonna have to worry about it, but it's just good practice, and especially if you get to a point with streaming or anything where you become more in the public eye for whatever reason, even if it's just a small community, just do it, because if somebody gets one and they can get into everything all of a sudden, that'd be horrendous. Imagine, just put yourself in the position where, okay, your email address gets compromised, and they have your password for your email address. That's bad, right? Nobody wants that, and it's gonna be annoying. You're gonna have to talk to whoever, the provider, sort it out. If people get a load of dodgy emails from it, though, you can probably cover that. But like, if they got everything, and they got your Twitch account, and they got, that would just be, and if they got that all from because you'd use the same password, then you'd be feeling pretty annoyed. But you tell us about LastPass though, Nick.
Yeah, so with LastPass, you can generate passwords for, those of you who are like me who will not remember what code you used. I just will not. So you can generate a random password, and it does have 2-factor authentication. So it really is one of the most secure ways that you can do passwording. Yeah. It is a pain in the butt when you're like, hey, Snack Daddy, what's the Netflix email? And he has to log into LastPass and then send you this whole weird, character thing. But it's worth it. It's really worth it. It's going to protect you and keep you safe. It is free. I know they have a premium, which has a few additional options, but it's not like, okay, well, if I really am going to use this and get the best out of it, I have to have premium. You don't have to have premium. You can use it free and get so much out of it and never feel like you're missing anything. The premium just has a few additional things. But yeah, I'm looking at it. They do have 2-factor authentication as well. And again, you can have all your passwords stored in one place. You can bookmark them, put them in different areas and such, generate random passwords, and then add that 2-factor on top of it. Which is kind of like 3-factor, I guess, for some websites. You can do the 2-factor, and it's just really cool. It's a great way to keep things safe. And then, I know I talked about the email earlier. I'm just looking up like all the stuff I use now so that I can explain it properly in their words. So the email I was talking about, I use Tutamail personally. There are other websites that work as well. So they use an anonymous email, which means no personal information, no phone numbers are required to register. Which I have confirmed. We do not log your IP addresses and strip IP addresses from emails sent and received. So if you send or receive emails, no IP is getting through. They also encrypt everything. I'm so sorry. They encrypt everything. So whether you use a secure email web client or apps for Android and iOS, or a desktop client or Windows, Linux or Mac OS, so you can get it pretty much everywhere. Easily send a secure email with the knowledge that the Tutanota email encryption protects subject, body, and attachments from prying eyes. Import all of your contacts into the encrypted address book, and rest assured that nobody else can access your contact's personal information. You get a free encrypted calendar, and it is encrypted in Germany. So it's just like all of these ways that they don't do ads as well. There are no ads. Right. So, I mean, really just one of the most secure, we're talking about VPNs. We're talking about, kind of just security in general. So LastPass is good. NordVPN is good. Tutanota is good. DuckDuckGo is good. Yeah. Just there are so many tools that you can use to protect yourself. And I think it's rough because you're giving out your information, but you're hopefully giving it out to better people than the alternatives.
Yeah. So, because I think a lot of people assume that, they know that hacking happens. They know that people try and get hold of your personal information, but I think they just assume it won't happen to them and that everybody's doing their best. The companies are doing their best to look after you. Well, they're doing their best to look after themselves first, then look after you. Like a good example, like some years ago, probably when I was at university the first time, in the city where I was living, me and a friend, this would have been like 2007. So like Wi-Fi was a thing. People having Wi-Fi, and obviously you had a Wi-Fi password, right? And it would be on the back of the router or whatever. Still is usually. But if you connected to the router via the Wi-Fi, and then typed in the standard address from the Wi-Fi, which was normally like 192.168.255 or whatever, we just tested out whether people had actually gone into their router settings, because this was like before. This was like when they were more primitive, and we went along on our street, and we found 7 Wi-Fi routers that we could get into, like just by using. Yes, they had a password on them for the normal connection, but went through to the router, connected direct to the router, which has a password and username on it as well. And because it just used to be admin on all of them, like, as default. We got into 7 on one street. This was in 2007. Now, they don't come like that anymore. Well, they don't in the UK. They don't come like that anymore. They also have a default password for the admin as well. It's normally still admin, but then it's normally like a really long, like loads of characters password. Yeah. But like that was in 2007 when Wi-Fi had been out for like 3 or 4 years, already. Like where for the most part, a lot of people had Wi-Fi by that time, and nobody was going around saying, "Oh, people just thought, well, I've got a password on it, so nobody can get in." And people who weren't tech savvy, they had no idea. And like I say, 7 different routers we could connect to on that street, and happily use their connection for whatever we wanted, if we had wanted. Yeah. We didn't change the passwords, but like we could have done. We could have then just changed, and that's the other thing. We could have just changed the password and locked them out of it, and they'd have had to press reset, hard reset it on the back. So don't assume that because the technology is here that it's necessarily safe. That would be one of my points, because things like that happen all the time, and they're not brought to. Sometimes then, as big a security risk, as safety risk as it was, they weren't brought to people's attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, make sure that you're just vigilant, I guess, is the biggest thing to take from this.
Yeah, and then I do have a few more tools to share, if you don't mind.
Of course.
That I think people would really enjoy. So. We just finished talking about Tutanota and how they're an awesome email. Yeah. Let's say you want to sign up for something that you literally never want those emails for. Sure, you can use your Tutanota email or another secure email address. Why don't you use tempemail.com, which gives you a burner email address? I shit you not. It gives you a burner email address. You do have access to the inbox too. So let's say you need to sign up and you literally just need that one email. It's like, okay, 15% off of your order today if you sign up for our email. You only want the 15%. You don't want to sign up for their crap. So you use tempemail.com. you do have access to the email inbox. They get purged every now and again, so you only have access for like a limited time, and then it gets purged.
But you just need that code, don't you? You just need that code.
You just to
so
if you just need it for a few emails, or you just need it for an hour or a few days,
burn it, get rid of.
You're absolutely
gone.
Absolutely. So temp email, you can install it as an extension in Chrome, and I'm sure in Firefox too. Probably. I use Chrome, so I only know that.
What about Safari? I don't know.
No.
This is
no words.
This is one of the. So it actually goes both ways with Apple. So for instance, like the App Store, you can only on an Apple phone, you can only use apps that have been vetted by Apple.
Yeah.
But on an Android phone, anything goes, right? You can use any app. I mean, don't get me wrong, you're still safe on the Play Store and all the stuff that's been vetted by Google, and they do allow more than Apple, but there are many dodgy sites where you can download apps for your Android device and just install them freely. Android isn't going to stop you. So that can be a bad thing. But then
certainly.
But then at the same time, Apple is saying we are only letting you download apps that we say, whereas Google Play can't really do that because they're catering to so many different, they're catering to so many different. I mean, they do it, but there are a lot of apps that you can't get through the App Store that you can get through Google Play.
Yeah,
like, there are so many, and in some ways it's safer, but then in some ways Apple are telling you what you can and can't do, which is kind of weird. So I wonder is it on Safari? This
that's the I don't know. I have no idea because I don't have an iPhone, nor do I use a Mac. So I'm not sure about that. I will say with the Android thing, if you are using these, again, consider what you're giving out. So for temp email, it's temp-mail.org. So you don't have to sign up. You don't have to make an account. I haven't given them any of my personal information. Now, if you have the extension, because you can use it without the extension. If you have the extension, you have to consider some of the risks of those. Again, just like with anything, just make sure what you're giving out, if anything, is worth what you're getting back. So with temp email, because I haven't given them any, like they don't have my home address or anything like that. And if you use a VPN, they don't have your IP address, or like they don't have my name, they don't have my birth date. But it depends, right? So, and of course you can go and read their information and their facts and their terms. I use this because SnackDaddy actually is a SOC and NOC manager, which is a security operations center and network operations center manager. And security is like his thing. So he's already pre-vetted some of this stuff for me, which is why I use it.
Yeah, of course.
But I didn't have to. I will say from my end, from what I've looked at, I haven't had to like sign up for anything. I haven't had to make an account or anything like that. So that's been really nice. But certainly you guys do your own information research. Certainly double check to make sure it's something you're personally comfortable with and comfortable with giving any information out, because what I consider a pro and con and what I consider worth the risks or not worth the risks are going to be different for everyone. So yeah. But I don't know about Safari and Mac because I don't use them. I had a Mac for like a year and I hated it.
I mean, I'm the same. I know very, very little about Apple and Mac. I had an iPhone once, never again.
I had an iPhone for a long time until they started charging ridiculous prices, and then I kind of flipped them the bird and headed off.
Well, when they first sort of came out, it was like, hey, it was like something new and different, and then they were like, hey.
Well, their keyboard is, amazing, because they use keyboard technology that they've actually patented.
Yes.
So yeah, and it's a really, if you guys want to look into that, it's so interesting, the difference between their keyboard and an Android keyboard. I love their keyboard. It makes me so irritated that it's patented and I can't get it on my Android. But yeah, their keyboard's just, I mean, it's superior.
And then they became
other than that, they suck.
Then they became like, hey, stupid, you're going to buy this next phone, and it's hardly going to be an upgrade at all. And it's going to cost you $1 billion. It's going to cost you a lot more than the Android equivalent for less spec. But you're gonna buy it anyway, and people do,
which is why I switched.
And there was and then
I missed the keyboard, but everything else is like
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus, my camera's better. I have like a phone that has like 3 cameras on the back, which is like, what? It's pretty nice.
Yeah, my brother's just got one of those.
And I got it for a lot cheaper. So
yeah, exactly.
It takes really good photos.
Exactly. All right.
See, what else? Did I had one more.
Oh, wait. Yes, carry on, Nick.
That I want to talk about. P.O. boxes and mail forwarders. That was the other thing I wanted to talk about. Just
right.
Real quick, I'll go over it.
Yes.
Oh, no. There's something even better before I talk about this.
Go on.
Let me hit y'all with some fun. Privacy.com lets you create unique credit cards that can be used as a one-time burner or a specific subscription. So this is really fucking cool. Let's say you want to try out a subscription to something, but you don't want it to renew because you don't know if you're going to like it or not. A lot of us, we try out a subscription and then we're like, I don't really want to renew it, but we forget and we get charged. Right. Privacy.com literally generates like a credit card for you. Of course, the credit card, I believe, expires after a while. I'm not entirely sure. StackDaddy uses this a lot, and this is one that I'm going to start using a lot. But you can designate one-time purchases. You can say, I only want this to be charged one time, or I only want this amount to be allowed to be charged on this. So if anybody does find out that credit card information, it doesn't matter. You only put $15 on it. Or you could say, I only want $12 every single month to be charged on it and no more. Like there are just a lot of options with that. So if you're the kind of person who does a lot of free trials or a lot of subscription services, you're going to love this. It's incredible for that. It really is, to make sure that you aren't getting overcharged, to make sure that you keep track of what subscriptions you have. It's just so fantastic. And it's all in one place. So let's say you wanted to keep your subscriptions on one card. You're able to do that. Let's say you get a new credit card and you don't want to go to every single subscription service and change it. You go to privacy.com, change your credit card information. None of the other numbers have changed. You only have to change it once, not 30 different times. So that's another one that is really fantastic. And then just real quick, the P.O. boxes and mail forwarders. If you're a streamer and you want stuff delivered to you, don't forget P.O. boxes are an option. And I've been given the tip to make your P.O. box a few cities over. I think that's a really good idea. Let's say you have to drive 30 minutes, even an hour to your P.O. box.
Yeah.
You're only doing it once a week, once a month, twice a month. Like, I mean, so it's worth it. So certainly put your P.O. box outside of your living area, and keep in mind that you can use mail forwarding as well. If you're a bigger streamer, mail forwarding is expensive, but if you're a bigger streamer, you can double up mail forwarding and P.O. box and just really keep yourself safe. So I think those were all the ones I wanted to.
The P.O. box thing is incredibly important, I think. Especially for the big streamers, because people get to the point where people have asked me in the past to send me stuff. And I'm just like I trust them completely, but I'm just like, I don't want to open that gate and then say no to some people, and just nah. And I told them, I said, if we make partner, then I'll open a PO box.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't need to until then. But keep yourselves safe.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot for today, Nick. I think we covered everything we want to cover. Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week with a fresh topic. So I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.